Hello everybody and welcome to this video on joins in SQL. A join is a way of combining data from multiple tables based on a common field between these tables. And we're going to be going over the main joins that you would come across when using SQL. So these are the two tables that we're going to be using throughout the course of the video in the examples of the joins. So the identity table, which identifies all of the different animals, and the attributes table, which shows the lifespan and height of the animals. I also want to quickly mention terminology-wise, I'll be using the word field for a column, field value for a value from that column, the word record for a row, and the word cell for a single part of data in the table. So we're going to be looking at the inner join to begin with, using these two tables. So this is the type of query that you'd expect to see when you are joining using an inner join in SQL. So the select clause to begin with will be selecting all of the fields in both of the tables because of the star symbol. So we're going to be doing that here. Then moving down to the from clause, we're going to be specifying from the identity table, and this also tells SQL that the identity table is going to be the left and the first table, and we're then going to be joining on to the attributes table using the inner join, which is the main focus here, the inner join clause, using the on keyword, which then specifies that we're going to be looking at these common fields of ID, and we're going to be looking for when the ID of identity matches to the ID of attributes. So we can see here, if we're moving down the IDs of identity, that the ID 3 here matches with the ID of attributes. So as there is a match, we're going to be moving these records across, and this will complete our first combined record of the new join table. We can see here again that we have a match on the ID of 2 in both the identity and attributes table, so we're going to be combining these records into the new join table using the ID fields from both of the tables. So we have a duplicate ID field in the join table. Now we move down here in the identity table and we see that the ID 4 cannot be found in the attributes table, so there is no match. So as a result, we leave this and we carry on, and we look and we see that 1, the ID, is joined and matching on the attributes table, so we combine these two fields. We then look at the last ID, and this is ID number 5. This does not match any of the IDs in the attributes table, so we leave it. Now this final clause is just an additional clause I've put in to neaten everything up, the order by clause, which will just order by the identity.id. So we're going to order by here. This neatens up the table, and that is how you would complete inner join in SQL. So we're going to be looking at natural join next, which is very similar to inner join in the sense that it will be looking for a common field and combining the records based on this common field. However, unlike inner join, we don't need to specify the common field using the on clause. So we don't need to specify the identity.id is equal to the attributes.id expression. Natural join will just do that automatically. In natural join, we won't have a duplicate common field. So we won't have a duplicate ID field this time. The ID fields will be combined into one. So let's have a look. So this is the type of query that you'd get with a natural join. So first of all, we're going to be using that select clause, the select star. So we're going to be selecting all of the fields from both of the tables. And you see this time the common field, the ID, combines into one field in the joined table. So next we're going to have that from clause that we saw in the inner join as well, and then we're going to be natural joining onto the attributes table. So that's the main focus, and we can see here, as we did before, the ID number 3 is equal to the ID number 3 in the identity and attributes table. So we're going to combine the records from them, and we can see that the common field is going to be combined, so we don't have that duplicate ID. And then we're just going to go through this process again. When we get to 4 in the identity table, we can see that there isn't a match, so we're going to ignore it, and we're going to move on, and we're going to see that 1 is found in both the identity and the attributes table, so we're going to combine these into a new record in the join table, and 5 is not found in the attributes table, so we're going to ignore this. And then once again, I've added an order by clause just to neaten everything up, so that's how it would be ordered in descending order from top to bottom with the IDs 1, 2, and 3, and that is how you would complete a natural join in SQL. So the next type of join is a left outer join, and we're going to be returning all of the records from the left table and only the records that are matched in some sort of way from the right table. So let's have a look at how we would go about doing that. So this is the sort of query that you'd see for a left outer join, and you can see once again we're going to be using that on keyword. So we're going to be selecting all of the fields from both of the tables as before. So there we go, we're going to be having that duplicate ID field this time, unlike the natural join. It's going to be from the identity table once again. So this is the main focus. So we're going to be returning all of the records from the left table no matter what. So let's see how that would go about. So first of all, we're going to be looking and seeing if the ID number 3 matches with any of the other IDs in the attributes table, and as we can see indicated by the blue, we can see that there is a match. So we're going to be moving all of the records from both the identity and attributes table, and we're going to be combining those two records into one for this join, and that is very similar to the inner join. We're going to be moving down the identity table, and we can see that the ID number 2 does indeed match, so we're going to be combining those two records. Now this is where it gets slightly interesting and different to what we've seen before. The number 4 ID, we would ignore this in the inner join and the natural join because there is no match with the attributes table. However, in the left outer join, we're going to be including just the record from the identity table. However, we're not going to be including any record from the attributes table because there is no linking record from the attributes table, so that's just going to be put as a null for the size of the attributes table, which is 3 fields along. We're then going to be moving down in the identity table, and we can see that the ID number 1 matches to the ID number 1 in the attributes table, so we're going to be combining those two records. And then we get to the ID number 5 in the identity table, and we can see that this doesn't match any of the IDs in the attributes table. So we're just going to be using the record from the identity table because there is no record that we could be using from the attributes table because there is no link and there is no ID number 5 in the attributes table, so that's going to be null. And as before, I'm going to use the order by clause to neaten everything up. So the IDs will go from 1 to 5. And that completes how to do a left outer join in SQL. The right outer join follows a similar pattern to the left outer join in that we return all the records from the right table and only the records that are matched in some sort of way from the left table. So the joined table is going to be opposite to what we had in the left outer join. So this is the sort of query you'd get for a right outer join, and once again we're going to be selecting all of the fields from the identity table and the attributes table. So we're going to be doing that now, and then we're going to be specifying that we're looking at the identity table initially, and we want to join that onto the attributes table using the from clause, and this is going to be the right outer join, once again using that on keyword to specify that we're linking together the two IDs and they are the common fields of the tables. So once again we're going to look down this identity table. So the ID3 matches to the ID3 in the attributes table, so we're going to be combining those two records into one record in the join table, and I'm going to be leaving the colors on the IDs just because I think it helps with understanding what's going on here. So the ID number 2 is the same in the identity and the attributes table, so we're going to be combining these records, and this is where it gets interesting, of course, because the ID number 4 isn't found on the attributes table, so we're going to be leaving that for now and we're going to be carrying on. So we're going to be looking at the ID number 1, which is matching here with the lifespan of 20 years and the height of 0.7 meters. So we know that that is a giant panda. So we're going to be combining those two records. And then finally we have another ID here, ID number 5, which isn't found whatsoever in the attributes table. And now we can see in the attributes table that we have 2 leftover records that have not been used. So we can see that from the identity table we also have 2 records that don't have a resulting records from the attributes table. So we're going to be filling in 2 records in the join table that are null, and this is because of the 2 records that are in orange here that can't be found linked in the attributes table. And then as a result we have 2 records in the attributes table that aren't linked whatsoever, and they're going to go across here and they're going to complete the joined records in the table over here. So we can see now that on the right hand side we have all of the records from the attributes table, and on the left hand side we only have the records that were joined via an ID on the attributes table. So it's almost opposite in the way it looks from the left outer join, but it's a very similar sort of process that you go through. And once again we're going to be ordering by the identity.id. So this is going to order here, so this neatens it up, and that's how you would go about completing a right outer join in SQL. So this concludes part 1 of this series of videos on SQL joins. You can find all of the queries that I have used in this video and will be using in the next video on my GitHub, which is found on this link. And that might be useful to you if you want to copy the queries and have a little play around with the different types of joins and see what happens if you change certain expressions, etc. And I think this is the best way to kind of cement your knowledge on the area. So I've included these, and I will hopefully see you for part 2 of this video on SQL joins. Thank you for watching.